Awesome. Good morning, CBGR. I hope everybody's having a fabulous morning to their Friday. Today, Michelle is going to go over the grid part of the RPA, which is, I believe, page 1 through 3, right, Michelle?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be a very good session for you all to learn and understand the grid portion. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Michelle.
Thank you, Ruben.
You're welcome.
Okay, so this week I've been studying up on some things. So when I learn, something or something triggers my memory to bring this up, I want to do that. So this section here that we're in is a residential listing agreement. And the only thing that I'm going to mention here is I want you to pay attention to, it is 10C right here, buyer letters or love letters, we sometimes call them. So here you can see that it's tying into the Fair Housing and Discrimination Advisory form that we give to the buyer and seller. But I want to drop down to C2. So if you look at A and B, so the seller instructs the broker not to present buyer letters, whether submitted with an offer or separately at a different time. Furthermore, the seller is authorizing the broker to specify, probably in the agent remarks of the MLS, that buyer letters will not be presented. And why is that? Because they don't want to have any appearance of bias or anything like that, or due to protected class or anything like that. Now, there's also a choice in 2B where the seller, if you check this, the seller is instructing the broker to present the buyer letters, and broker advises the seller that the buyer letters may contain information about protected classes or characteristics, and such information should not be used in the seller's decision whether to accept, reject, or counter an offer. So I just wanted to bring this up to you. This is in the residential listing agreement, so just be aware of that. So now I'm going to flip into the California purchase agreement. Okay, bear with me. Let me just pull it up and full screen it. So the reason I brought that up is because I'm going to go really quickly over a couple of things. We all know to do the agency disclosure prior to writing an offer, have them review and sign that first. That also goes with your listings, okay? So most of us are pretty good at getting that done. What this explains is how we can represent them. Buyer's agent, dual agent, and it gives the, and seller's agent, and it gives the responsibilities of the agent, and it's required per civil code. So just make sure that that's always up top before you do anything, okay? Because we want the same date. So on the fair housing, I want to point out 8A. So right here, 8A, prior to acceptance of an offer, asking for or offering buyer personal information or letters from the buyer, especially with photos, okay? Those types of documents may inadvertently reveal or be perceived as revealing protected status information. So the only reason I'm pointing this out in fair housing is because I'm a big advocate of, with the listing agreement, letting it default to not taking the letters and documenting the MLS. Now, if the seller insists on it, then you'll need to check that box on your listing agreement. But I just want to bring that up just so you understand that, okay? So these are things that I just think of and I start going over them. There's one other thing on, hi Maggie, on possible representation of more than one buyer or seller. I learn something new every day, or I'm refreshed every day. So I want to bring this up to you. So offers are not necessarily confidential. So the buyer is advised that the seller or the listing agent may disclose the existence of your terms or conditions of the buyer's offer unless all parties have signed a confidentiality agreement. So in order to make your offer, which I don't see this in residential, we'll see it more in commercial. In order to make that offer confidential, it would require both agents signing, or all agents involved, a seller and a buyer. So we normally don't see that, but I want to bring this up to you that your offer is not necessarily confidential. let's say you were in a multiple situation and you're the listing agent, you know, and you have agents calling in, you could say, yeah, I have offers at full ask or above. You could even name a price, but perhaps it may be better to let them know that it's asking or above. And then if you have multiple offers, because I was strategizing with this and I called the car hotline just to make sure, you could, you know, point them and give them some terms. However, maybe you tell them it's over ask or whatever, and then on your multiple counters, you could ask for the best and final offer, because if you could get more money for your client, that's good for your client. So just bear in mind that you cannot disclose anything that would weaken the seller's position. So what may that be? Oh, they have to be in Washington, D.C. when, you know, within 6 weeks flat. You know, anything like that that would weaken position of your client, you can't disclose that. But you can see right here about this offers are not necessarily confidential. Okay, so just don't, bear in mind, don't disclose items that will weaken your seller's position or your buyers for that matter. Okay, so I just wanted to point that out because I've never really paid much attention to that as I was reading this. So I think that's a good clause to be aware of. And before I continue on, does anybody have any questions? Okay. All right. So we're going to move on. Wire fraud advisory. We know that we don't want to be involved in giving directions, giving paper of wire fraud instructions. Always have that go direct from escrow to the client. I always tell the clients to make sure, even if you've received that in secure email from your escrow officer, please call that officer when you're at the bank. Bring your cell phone, call them, make sure, and go over that again with them. I think it just doesn't hurt to be careful because there is, you know, some wire fraud going on. So we know how to fill out the top of this, and this is very important that we're confirming the agency, and we've went over that several times. So I'm just going to get right to the grid. So we had a discussion a few weeks, I don't remember, maybe 3 weeks ago, but anyway, the purchase price you put here, all cash is cash. That's cash on hand. It's not hard money loans, things like that. I went back and looked at additional training on that. Anything that would have terms on it, please don't call it all cash if they're getting a hard money loan or anything like that, because there's going to be terms to meet. And I think that Ruben could probably address that portion better. But all cash, we want all cash, meaning it's in their account. It could be in their 401k. It could be, you know, things like that where they're authorized to use that money. Any comment on that, Ruben?
Yeah, and if you're representing the seller as a listing agent and you are getting all cash, if it is checked as an all cash offer, just be, you know, verify that they do have the liquidity to purchase that as all cash. You're going to find there's a lot of investors out there that have a line of credit with a hard money lender or something like that. That's not considered all cash because they still have to get the money to purchase it. So just be wary of that. And also, since we're on the same topic of investors, if you ever see an offer come in with and or assignee, that's another indication that the property is being the person that's offering to purchase it may be an investor or a wholesale agent that just wants to tie up the property to resell it. So they have no desire to purchase it. So just be wary of that, okay? And or assignee, that means that they can assign that purchase contract to another party.
Correct. Yep. Thank you, Ruben. So just to go backwards a little bit, when you are countering these terms in the grid, I call it the grid, some people call it something different, but this is 3A. So 3A purchase price, 3B close of escrow. So that's how you reference it. So you want it, you don't want any ambiguity on your counter offers. Make sure that you're referencing I'm very particular. I'll put 3C expiration of offer if I'm countering that point. So just reference it because this is all paragraph 3, this grid section, and this is your reference number here, your reference letter. And then I would put the title of what you're countering because we don't want ambiguity. So close of escrow, you're either going to put your 30 days or 60 days, whatever it is, or insert a date. You want to probably look and make sure you're not inserting a weekend date or a holiday date. Okay. Expiration of offer, 3 calendar days after buyer signature, it will default to that, or you can insert a date. If you have a lucky date or the people, prefer a different date. So you can insert that. It defaults to 5 p.m. or you could stick another time in there. So your initial deposit, because liquidated damage on residential caps out at 3%, most listing agents are going to look for 3%. So if you put your deposit here, it's going to automatically calculate the percentage. I don't recommend trying less because you're normally going to get a counter, but that's up to you and your business. For me, if you're a buyer's agent, you want to come out as strong as you can. And I recommend a 3%, but again, that's up to your client, what their thoughts are on that. And so then you insert that in here. And this is the only section in the grid, which will be business days, that the client within 3 business days, or you can insert 1 day or 2 days or whatever, but give them time to get the wire in. 3 business days. So if it's a Monday is a holiday, then it's, that Monday doesn't count. Okay. So it's business days when the banks are open, when escrow's open. Okay. And then you can insert a different method, but remember the escrow can say, hey, we don't take a personal check, or we're not going to take a cashier's check. We want a wire. So escrow can accept that method or not. So just bear that in mind. Normally you're going to wire. Now, increased deposit, normally you're not going to be checking this. Maybe you've put an initial deposit in that's less than 3%, and you need to clear some money out of your stock account, your 401k account. And in case of a 401, maybe they need an executed purchase offer to give you that money on your house. But anyway, normally you're not going to see an increased deposit on residential. I'll say that. But if you do need to use it, check that box. When you are in, this is more for listing agents, and I suppose buyers, but you're going to use an increased deposit form at the time of the wire going into escrow, not prior. Okay, because this will now include that in liquidated damages if you checked the appropriate box on the DID. Okay, so it defaults here that upon removal of all contingencies. So the increased deposit will come into effect upon removal of all contingencies, meaning that would be the due date, or you insert a date. Okay, so let me see. Loan amount. You're going to put your first here if it's not all cash. And it defaults to fixed rate, or if it's an adjustable, put here. I always recommend, and if Ruben has something to say about it, but for me, I was just telling somebody yesterday, please don't leave this blank. Don't leave your percentages blank. You want to be as protective of your client as possible. So please put a not to exceed in here, percentage points for the loan. And you can check with the lender. Make sure you're checking with the lender to see what it is. Maybe you're going to go up a quarter on this because you're not sure. Like if they quote a 6, it may be, maybe you want to put 6 1/4. That's up to you and your client, but please be including the lender in that conversation. And points. If they're buying down points or something like that, you can insert the points here. Do you have anything to say about the not to exceed percentage, Ruben?
Yeah, just communicate with the lender, make sure that they're good to go, they're fully qualified, the contingency periods, especially the loan and the appraisal contingency. And then while you're in that conversation with the lender or loan officer, discuss the rate that they're going to be, the prevailing rate. And if you're going to include a max interest rate here, especially with a volatile market, just consult the loan officer because this is the
Mhm.
contract, you know, so if, you know, just as a safeguard, talk to the loan officer to put that in. And also the points too. If they're charging
Yes.
points, that's where you put it, regardless if the seller is paying for it or not.
Mm-hmm. Right. Thank you. So it defaults over here to conventional, or if you check, you can check these other ways, FHA and VA. So the forms, the FBAC and HID will attach to FHA. If you check that, VA, the FBAC. Now, remember, we went over this before. The FHA and VA have a little bit higher, I guess I'll call it protection for the appraisal, because on the FBAC, there is an amount that the property will appraise at. Generally, it's going to match your offer amount, right? So that, even if they remove the appraisal contingency, those two types of loans still have that appraisal contingency in effect, regardless if you removed it or not. Okay, so bear that in mind. So as a listing agent, let's say the offer came in, always remember, if an offer comes in and you're going to counter it up on these FHA VAs, make sure that you attach a new FBAC with the new amount on that form, because when they presented you with the original offer, it may be a lower price. Let's match what you're countering, bring that into your counter offer and have them re-sign it and delete the other one, okay? So you just want to make sure of that. So the FHA VA, what's nice about the new RR or updated RR is that any of the repairs required, lender required repairs can now be outlined on the RR. You don't need anything separate. It's all nicely laid out. You check the box, you write in what the lender's requesting, and submit that as a request for repair for the seller to review and see if they're, you know, if they'll do some of the repairs. Lender required repairs, usually a seller's going to look to do them, because if they've accepted FHA or VA, they do want to close the deal. But again, that's negotiation points and up to the listing agent and the seller to discuss. Additional financed amount, if this applies, normally it's not going to, but maybe sometimes it does. Please make sure that you're filling it in the same way we filled in the loan amount. It's going to operate the same way, okay? So it's conventional, or if checked, it could be seller financing or some other form. And occupancy type, it defaults to primary. Make sure that you're reviewing with your buyer that it's not a secondary or investment home. You know, don't accidentally check them if it's not, because the interest rates could be higher. But at any rate, go over that. Make sure that this is their primary home. You would know that because you're working with them already. Okay. So are there any questions before we continue on? Okay. If you have any, you know, speak up, put them in the chat box. Seller credit, if any, to buyer. We've went over this quite a few times, but I saw a case where the agent did not check the credit with the lender. If this is a loan, please, folks, check to make sure that the lender can absorb that full credit, because what happens is you put in 10,000, they can only give them 8,000 for closing. Guess what? The 2,000 is off the table. Okay, so please make sure. Now, if that happens to you, do your best for your client. If something happens where, oh no, the lender's only allowing 8, but you're already going to be ahead of the game because you're great buyer's agents and you've already talked to the lender. But in the event it does, you may want to ask the other side to reduce the sales price by 2,000 or something. I'm just saying whatever wasn't that they couldn't credit. But we won't be in that situation because we're going to be talking to the lender in advance. So please, and you can see right here, it defaults to seller credit to be applied to closing costs. But if you're ever in a situation, you can try to see if they can reduce the purchase price. You know, that's up to the seller, but at least you're swinging the bat for your client. You want to take the best care of your client. But the best way to do it is to be talking to the lender. How much credit can I put in there for the closing costs? Okay. Because if you think about it this way too, say you're negotiating a request for repair, you've already put in the max closing costs, right? and then you don't think about it, and then you're trying to get money credited for repairs, you could have a problem. So just make sure anything where there's credits or money coming back, make sure that you are checking with the lender a couple of times, okay?
I have a question.
Yes.
So, on the buyer side, if you're representing the buyer and you make an offer as for the buyer, how would you know how much the cost of the repair if you don't have inspection yet?
Oh, you don't know. That comes later. Okay, so he's asking, how would I know what the cost of repairs would be making this offer? You will do the inspection within your contingency periods. At that point, then you're going to submit your request for repair. You know, you can ask the seller to repair it, but my only caution is if you're asking for additional credits, please be careful, be communicating with the lender at all times on any credits coming through to the buyer. That is my caution to you.
This is actually up here, that's a purchase.
This is the purchase.
So therefore, when you negotiate with a seller, sometimes you ask them for credit for some reason. You say, you need to help me foreclose my escrow, so I want you to credit me 2,000. The one that you're talking about repair, that's come later.
Oh, okay. So this one is for.
This is more for closing costs.
Right.
Yeah.
And then when it comes that
Yeah.
point, then you call the lender to find out how much exactly
Correct.
the lender was willing to give you credit. Then you match the number, but they're not gonna work for it.
Right. And don't, you know, like, because once somebody sees a figure in here, it's going to hurt them if they think, oh, I thought I was getting, you know, 7,000 and now I'm only getting 4. So your best bet is to have that relationship and that, you know, with the lender, and to have that conversation and say, hey, the purchase price is $525. We want to ask the seller to credit the closing costs. Please be talking to the lender ahead of time. You don't want to disappoint your buyer, you know, or you can explain to the buyer how the credits work. Okay.
Does most lenders really give credit for the closing costs?
No, it's not the lender. It's what they will accept. So if you ask for credits on a contract, the lender needs to tell you if they can absorb that credit. It's not up to the seller all the way. And Ruben can jump in on this. The lender has to approve that credit amount, because you don't ever want to get to closing table and you didn't check, and then they get 3,000 pulled back from them at closing table, you know, and you don't have time to even explain. So please check ahead of time. I like to be upfront. Yeah.
So rule of thumb, the maximum allowed for the lender, the programs available, conventional FHA is 3% of the sales price. So if you ask, if you ask for more, that's just going to go back to the seller.
Yeah. Just reverts back unless you have, like I said, you realize like, oh no, but at least you tried to ask to reduce the price. The seller doesn't have to do that if, you know, the lender's not going to let you take all that credit. So it's just better to be really transparent up front, make sure that you've written. Yeah. So G3, I hope it was clear from our other trainings. This is if the buyer's agent already had an agreement in place prior to this offer where the buyer was going to compensate the agent. If that's the case, you can check this and see if the seller will agree to pay it. Okay. The additional, like if it was 2 on the MLS and there was another and the buyer had agreed to pay their agent 3%, see if the seller will pay the difference. So normally I would say probably 90% of the time, this will never be checked. We won't use it, but I'm just so you understand it. Verification of all cash, very important that you, again, review the statement, make sure it's a current date within the last, I would say 30 days. Make sure that the name matches the one on the offer. Please don't give Uncle Charlie's, you know, bank statement for Sally Mae's, you know, offer. We have to match the names. So, if you didn't as a buyer's agent and you submit that, surely the listing agent will catch it, okay? Because we're always looking for matched names.
Michelle, can I say something?
Yes, please.
unless it's a donor. Okay, if it's a donor
Yes.
that's gonna be giving the money, like a father that's gonna be, you know, paying for the property. You just make sure the listing agent knows that, and then you could furnish the donor's statement.
Yeah, a letter, right? A gift
Yes.
letter? Okay.
Yeah, just a letter stating that it's gonna be paid by a donor, which is, you know,
Mhm.
usually a relative.
Okay, so if you have a gift letter or a donor letter, and make sure to include that. Because you don't want questions from, you know, the listing agent. If you already have the paperwork, go ahead and submit it so they understand, okay? Verification.
Michelle,
Uh-huh,
yeah, one last thing, even if it's not all cash, if it's a donor that's gonna be giving the buyer's down payment,
right.
that's your proof of funds as well.
Mm-hmm. And these should pretty much, I feel like these should tie in together. Right here, if it's all cash or verification, down payment and closing costs, if it's all cash, you're only giving one. But verification of down payment and closing costs, you would do the same. You're going to attach proof of funds. If you have a gift letter or a donor letter, attach that as well, because then they're going to look for names to match. And if they don't, then you already are ahead of the game. They're going to know you're a serious agent on top of your game, you know, because you already submitted and explained it. Okay, and I believe that if you can attach these, your offer is always stronger than waiting the 3 days or whatever you amend this to. Verification of loan application. I like it attached to the offer. I think most listing agents do. And then you're going to check over here what type of approval it is, loan application approval. Okay. Final verification of condition of property. This defaults to 5 days. When you're doing the final verification, please don't go under the 5 days, because if there's a problem, you need a little bit of time to, you know, try to remedy that. I like 7 days or so, because if there was repairs negotiated that the seller was going to perform, I may go over by myself and kind of check first if they'll let me, and then come back for the verification of condition and show the buyer. But you can do that all at once. So the reason you don't want to get too tight and too close into your close of escrow date is there's certain things you want to be verifying. If you negotiate any repairs, you know, kind of check that off, ask for the receipts, you know, when they've done them, things like that. Also make sure they didn't leave debris on the property, because trash can be kind of expensive. I had to pay for that once. I had to pay the guy $200 because my clients left it, you know, at the last minute. So make sure debris is gone, because that can be costly to have a haul away guy. If refrigerator was supposed to be left, you're going to want to look for that. So this is a very, very important step. Now, can the buyer waive it? Sure. There's a spot on the final verification of condition to waive it. We do not recommend that. I think this is such an important step. You want to look for the items that were supposed to be left, things that should be taken off the property, and repairs, etc. Okay. Assignment request. They built this right in, which wasn't like this before. You have 17 days after acceptance to request an assignment. So that is built into the contract, or the listing agent can counter and amend that down. I do have the assignment request pulled up in this stack, so I can show you very briefly. Loan and appraisal, you're going to note that all of these are now falling to 17 days. So if there's no loan, no appraisal, you can check that on a cash deal, but maybe on a cash deal, they still want an appraisal. That is entirely up to the client. Okay. If you insert amount here, let's say you're willing to pay an extra 10 or 20,000 if it doesn't appraise out, then you can assert the amount you're willing, the minimum purchase price that you're willing to pay. But remember, they're going to have to come in with the difference of that shortfall. Normally, I would say 95% of the time, this is never going to be filled out. You're not going to do that. You're going to go at appraised value, you know, unless it's a super, super tight market. And it is right now. So that's going to be up to you running your business and what you think is, you and your buyer think is best after you run comps and discuss it with them. Investigation of property. This is where you would do your inspections, Jeffrey. You have 17 days unless they have amended it. Okay. Informational access to property. You normally want these to match. Because it's the informational access is not a contingency, but you may want to go over there with a contractor, see what that bathroom's going to cost to remodel, see if your gigantic TV will fit in the living room, things of that nature. So you can investigate the property and look for things like that. Investigation of property, you also want to look at the surrounding area, check your school districts, even if it says a school district somewhere. You could even have them call the school district just to make sure, because sometimes you could be on a little border and that may be a problem. So, and check everything, check the neighborhood, check the noise levels. They can drive by at different times of the day, or they can drive by at night, your buyers, not you, and check things that are relevant to the property. We also want to make sure that we have already been checking on the insurance of the property. Very important. Want to make sure that you can get that insurance. Okay. Review of seller documents. You have 17 days after acceptance or 5 days after delivery. We always say listing agents deliver those as quick as possible because we don't want to be the reason that any contingency was extended. Okay. Same with the preliminary title report. We recommend that you order it right away. The title companies will do that for you. Be proactive when you're a listing agent. Have the NHD ordered and the prelims so that you're already reviewing those. Common interest disclosures, which is your HOA. Time of possession upon recordation. If it's contingent upon the seller buyer's property, make sure you do check that. I'm moving a little quicker because I think we know most of this. If you do a contingency removal, you are acting against, the advice of the agent. The only contingency removals you can automatically do here with a check mark is loan and appraisal for cash. If you do further, you're acting against our advice, and it tells you that right here. Okay. But in these really competitive times that we've seen in past markets, for those of us that have been around for a while, we've seen people come in with no contingencies, so remember that you need the TOPA if the seller is staying 1 to 29 days or fewer, or you need the RLAS, the residential lease after sale agreement, for 30 days or more. Those are very important documents. The occupied, here's where, if you know that somebody is occupying the unit, whether they are paying or not. So if Uncle Bill is in a bedroom at his niece's house and he's not paying rent, you still need to request a TOPA. You won't know this when you're making an offer perhaps, but you can ask the listing agents, are there any occupants in there other than those on title? I'm not talking about minor children. I'm talking about adults. Okay. So you want to cover that with a TOPA. Delivery of documents, the seller should deliver those within 7 days. And they put the provision for escrow holder to go ahead and sign within 5 days. Time to pay fees for ordering HOA documents. Those should be done pretty early. That the worst thing is to be held up by an HOA that isn't following your timeline. So do that early. Smoke detectors and water heater and carbon monoxide 7 days after acceptance. If it's the seller's responsibility, which it normally is going to be checked to the seller because they're in possession of the property, it's easier for them to do. If there's a representative authority, like it's an LLC or something like that, or a trustee for a trust, you're going to give that 3 days after acceptance. Make sure that you have that. Now, escrow is also going to ask for documents to, check on that. But also at the end of the offer, as we've gone over before, you can check a box now right on the offer that it's representation capacity. Okay. So make sure that you're going over the included items and checking anything that you desire them to leave on the property. Anything excluded, like say they have a really old refrigerator in the garage, you don't want that. Maybe put you know, you can exclude that. It's because you don't want to have haul away fees if it's not something that's useful to you. So make sure you're going over this. And as we said before, I would really strongly suggest that we all read paragraph 9, because there's a lot of things that are included in the sell. So we need to understand that as a listing agent and also as a buyer's agent. Natural hazard, I always check for environmental as well. And that is not a phase 1 like commercial. That's just environmental in the natural hazard disclosure, which they give on, you know, what's been going around in the area. So normally the seller, if there's other reports you're requesting, go ahead and insert them. Here's where you if you're a buyer's agent, you're usually going to have the seller pay for smokes. Please don't leave the government required point of sale inspection reports blank. Okay, make sure you're checking that if you're representing the buyer to the seller. So both of these, because even if we have a list of cities that require something, we still want to make sure and do the due diligence and check, okay? Escrow fees, it's usually each to pay their own, because you don't want a 50-50 split. If you are requesting escrow, you're going to type it in here. Always put the escrow company and the escrow officer. Same goes for title. If you're requesting title, if it's different from the escrow holder, make sure you're not only inserting the name, but the title officer or your title rep. Usually the owner's title insurance, you're going to check to seller. And right here, it automatically defaults to the buyer for the lender portion of the title insurance policy. County and city transfer taxes are generally the seller's expense. Everything is negotiable though, but representing a buyer, you're going to check these. HOA fee for preparing is seller if applicable, and certification fee is the buyer. HOA transfer fees, if it is applicable, you could check it to the seller. If you're representing the buyer, that's what I would do. Private transfer fees, because we may not know about them, it defaults to the seller, which I like a lot, okay? Home warranty, you wanna make sure you address this. Let's see, usually you're gonna ask the seller, but if it's highly competitive, you may not wanna ask, but you might wanna discuss it with your buyer and check it and see if they want to buy one, or you can check right here that the buyer is electing to waive the home warranty. Other terms, we're helping somebody yesterday. If you're related to the buyer, if this is your relative, make sure that you're disclosing, okay, that you're related, something like that. You don't have to put 1031 exchange in here because now we have forms to handle that. So we've went over a lot fairly quick. I'm going to look in the chat box and I have a couple more things. Okay, so one thing I want to bring up is the liquidated damages. We know in residential, because I was just discussing this yesterday with someone, that it's a 3% cap. I know we're not addressing commercial today, but I just want to bring this up so we all remember. And this, most of us do know this, but for commercial, we don't have a liquidated damages cap. So when you're writing an offer on a commercial car form, whatever your initial deposit is your liquidated damages. It's a little bit different on AIR, because AIR, you insert in the liquidated damages the amount that is the liquidated damages. But on car, it's whatever your initial deposit is. So I just want to make sure that we understand that distinction and remember 3% cap on residential. There's no cap on the car contract. So your initial deposit can be your liquidated damages. So make sure you understand that when you're writing. And you could split it up. You could put the initial deposit, let's say you're going to pick 3%. You could put 1.5 in at the time of the offer, and you can increase that deposit by 1.5 if the listing agent will allow it, not counter it, by another 1.5%, and that would be due to escrow upon removal of contingencies. But since this came up yesterday, I just want to reiterate, no cap on commercial, cap of 3% on residential. AIR has a blank line in the liquidated damages to fill in the amount. The car commercial contract does not. So just be aware of that. Okay. So I just want to bring that to your attention when We do study every week to see things that may help you and stay out of trouble with any of this. And we are here to help you with all of your offers. So, you know, I always like to say you're never alone at Coldwell Banker George Realty. We're here to help, here to assist, because your success is our success. So is there any questions? Okay, then I'll turn it back over to Ruben and we will get going.
All right, thank you, Michelle. Very informative.
Mhm.
If you guys have any questions after the session, this is going to be recorded. It's being recorded and it'll be sent out to everybody. And you also have Michelle and I to contact, okay? All right, so if there's no further questions, I'm going to go ahead and invite our affiliates to speak a little bit. And I think we don't have very many on yet, but we have Judy Chow. Good morning.
Okay, good morning.
The rates are
I haven't
dropping a
been here
little
for a
bit,
while.
huh?
Today's the rate has gone up, of course. 30-year fixed, the best rate today is 6%. 15 years, 5.375. Still relatively good. I closed a lot of them early part of May. They were in the 5.875, but toward end they were closing at 6.375, 6.5. And I mean they're okay. I mean they want to buy. No, I do a lot of pre-qualification and I notice that they can't get the property. It's really hard to get. It's very competitive, you know, to get the property. Yeah. Some of them remove the loan contingency. They can't even get it. It's very tough. Yeah. But so the rates are at 6 for 30-year fixed and 5.375 for 15 years today. Any question about the trend? I don't know the trend.
Well, nobody has that crystal ball, but I heard there's speculation that the Fed were not going to be increasing in 2 weeks. They're going to be halting their increase, right?
That's
Hopefully.
right. That's why the stock market went up. If
Yeah.
you bought Tesla, they went up really high.
Yeah, today was a good day for the stock market. So
Right,
the jobs
because-
report came out and hopefully they do not increase in 2 weeks. And
Yeah,
I think they're going to halt it. So
they'll hold the quarter in June. No, soon.
We have a
next week.
question in the room, Judy.
Yes.
Yeah, how much your lender offering for the seller's credit for closing costs? How much maximum?
I'm sorry.
He said, how
Lender?
much maximum for closing cost is the lender offering?
Okay, so the
Residential.
closing cost, I'm talking about residential, right? Okay,
Yeah.
so the closing cost they offer is really geared to the rate. For example, the best rate today is 6%, but the person says, I don't want to pay point, I don't want to pay closing fee, the rate just goes up. They can credit up to the closing costs. I've seen one in the last year with the, well, no, that's right, developer credit quite a bit, but they can credit all the closing costs if you're paying the rates. Yeah, so it's
I
not
think
something they do for free.
yeah, no, I think I think his question was the maximum contribution from a seller, isn't it
Oh,
3%?
Yes.
It's not 3%. It's for lender side, closing costs, all the closing costs. It could be 3 or 3.25. There's no limit on the closing costs. But closing costs is usually not that high. I'm doing a
Right.
really small loan, 150,000. So 3% is 4,500 in that case. Yeah.
Right.
But
So
most of the
so you're telling me on a conventional loan they can go over 3% contribution from the seller?
Oh, from seller. I thought from the lender. I thought the
No,
question
no,
was
no,
from the
no,
lender.
no, no.
Oh,
If the
from the
seller's
seller.
contributing towards the
I
closing
don't know
costs.
what your real estate guideline is, but I've seen seller given quite a bit. So the way the seller does it, we just close one, it has in the height. There was a lot of work to be done. So it was like $30,000 they asked, okay, but can't contribute that much, right? So what the seller does gave them 15,000 for closing costs, and then they reduced the price. They did a price adjustment. So
Right.
I think there's a limit. Yeah, they can give. I'm not sure. You might know how many percent. I never saw a percentage for seller. I just know that they can only contribute for the closing costs. Not
Yeah, I believe it's 3%. That's the cap that's allowed by the lender, by Fannie Freddie. Yeah.
okay. Then
But I can
I'll
verify
double
that.
check.
I'll verify
I'll
that
double
and
check.
get back to you, Jeff.
Okay, I can double check.
Thank you, Judy. All right, Sandy, good morning. I saw you earlier, so I'm giving you first dibs.
Hi, good morning, Coldwell Banker. Happy Friday. just wanted to give you guys a heads up. We are changing our product in mid-July. So that's anytime you see me between now and then, that's what I'm talking about. We're adding a new plan, changing coverage. There's going to be e-blast going out. There's going to be all kinds of stuff going out. So anything you're writing offers on between, if it's going to close after mid-July, shoot me the property address so I can make sure we get the right pricing on these things and that you have the right coverage for your clients. We're adding termite treatment.
Nice.
Home warranties doing termite. Who'd have thought? It's crazy times over here.
That's good. And it
Yeah,
just a
super excited.
yeah. Just a reminder, on July 7th, Sandy's gonna go into depth about that, right?
Yep.
At our Friday training on July 7th. So we're gonna give Sandy a little spot there to highlight her new products, okay? All right, Brandon, I saw you earlier, so I'll give you second dibs.
You might.
Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone's having a fantastic day. Can't believe we're in June. And so last time I saw you guys, I know I talked about content and giving you guys stuff to provide to your clients of value. So I'll put my info in the chat. A lot of that is preparedness. So we know that during the fire seasons and earthquake time, that a lot of people, it's on their minds. There's a lot of resources that you could provide to them that just keeps you top of mind. So there's some apps out there that'll be able to alert people when there's earthquakes, or there's a lot of different things when it comes to fire zones that I can provide you. But again, I want you to look like a rock star. And so I'm here to help you to get business, because that's how I get business, right? We can't do business unless you guys get more listings and sales. So anything I can do to help you, I'm here for you. And I look forward to seeing you guys next time.
Awesome. Thank you, Brandon. Well, let's keep it in the family. Angie, good morning.
I was hoping you'd pick me third because it's all First American.
I
Thanks,
saw that.
Hi, CVG. This is Angie, First American Title. Some really exciting news. We closed the largest, most expensive single-family residence home in California this
Wow.
last year. $225 million was the selling price in Malibu. And the owners now is Jay-Z and Beyonce, so we did insure them.
Wow.
Yeah, amazing property. It's in Malibu. So that's one of the reasons why we insured some of the largest transactions. We also insured Disneyland. We insured the Arcadia Mall. And the reason why is because we have stability and strength. And that's why the larger properties are always wanting to choose First American. So hopefully you guys can work with us. We're here to help you grow your business and build it. Angie Tang, First American Title, part of the trio. Thank you.
Thanks, Angie. Were you the rep? You're on mute, Angie. You're on mute. You gotta unmute yourself, Angie.
I wish I did the loan. You probably bought it cash.
I had just muted it. No, I wish I was a rep, but it was our Beverly Hills rep. He usually handles all of the containers, the
Oh,
majority market share in Beverly Hills. But I get bragging rights.
all right. Well, you get the next one, all right, Angie?
Yeah. Thank you.
All
Have a
right,
good-
let's go to Frank, the loan guy. How are you, Frank?
Hey, happy Friday, everybody. Happy. You know what? Everyone's calling it June gloom. I think of it this way. It's June boom, because we're already in the middle of the year. That's even more realistic. And hey, it's all about perspective, right? How you put it in perspective with everything. So happy June boom for everybody. To Angie's thing with First American Title, I wanna quote something from Jay-Z. 99 problems, but title insurance ain't one. And with that in mind, one thing actually with Sandy, because you know what, sometimes the best referral is one, or I should say the best compliment is one that can talk about somebody else. So our home, we have a condo in Azusa. We had a little bit of a little water leak problem, but because when we bought the home, we got it with First American. The home warranty was perfect. Thank you so much, Sandy, and the whole team and everything, because we were worried about it because we have a 2-story place and we don't know whether if it's going to be in the walls or outside, right? And that's real stuff, because if it's in the walls, you have to start breaking things down. Things are all over the place. Studs and so forth could be a problem. But I figured, you know what, let's first call our insurance, which originally was with Mark Wu, and it's still with Allstate. We called them up, tried to put a claim. They said, you know what, it wasn't that. We called the warranty. Warranty came in, fixed it, got it done. I paid my deductible, I think it was like 75 or 85 bucks. Best money ever spent because I didn't have to spend $300-400 or even $4,000 or $5,000 on a whole water insurance claim with home insurance. So having the right team put in place is essential with everything. And look, I'm a lender. I could have picked everybody. We picked them because of Patty, my wife, that worked at Alcoa Banker. And so thank you guys. With that in mind, I'll put some things right here on the thing that down payment assistance. We have it here at CMG with no income limits. You don't even have to be a first-time home buyer. I'll tell you more about it. It's called Home Fund It. And with that, we have an exclusive piece on how to do it. Give me a call. I'll help you with all that. Thanks, guys.
Hey, Frank, I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you work with Rocket Mortgage?
It's a good question. No, brokers do. I don't. And I study the market every day, and I study every single lender, almost every single lender out there to see, you know, which ones are everything. Rocket does have a lot of good products out there. I talked to a broker and they said, you know, so far right now, they're in that running race. And it's always that thing. You can either be cheap, you can be fast, or you can be good. You can only pick 2 out of 3. So which one are you going to be? Cheap, fast, or good? I think right now they've been very affordable. Why? Why do you ask?
We have
Well, 2
Rocket.
questions. Well, actually, 1 comment, 2 questions. I thought you were all 3, Frank.
No, I'm not cheap, but I'm great.
Well-
but I'm reliable, I'm responsible, I'm fair, I'm reasonable, and that something's better.
Well, the reason why I ask is because Rocket Mortgage just came out with a portfolio program that's 1% down. The 2% is contributed by Rocket Mortgage, no MI, and pretty competitive rates. How they're doing it, I don't know. They're portfolioing it, probably not. They're servicing it themselves, probably not selling it on a secondary market. But that's a phenomenal product.
Great. Yes, it is.
We
You have to
have
see-
Rocket. I'll ask.
Oh,
Yeah,
Judy has
so-
Rocket. So are you familiar with that program?
No, I'm not. I'll ask the rep.
So here's the
The
thing.
A-
It's there is AMI limits and loan limits, $350,000 or less. So
Right.
in California, might not work.
Well, I mean, yeah, you're right, because it doesn't make sense if you're putting a larger down payment. You might as well just go conventional and stuff. But it's available.
Yeah,
For-
absolutely.
The rural areas, you know, you could still find that price point if you go to like Hesperia, Victorville,
Tehachapi.
Tehachapi. I'll stay away from Tehachapi though.
I just closed the loan in Tehachapi. That's why, and it was for $275 on a USDA loan, no money down.
Wow, what's the acreage?
Who cares? They bought a home. No, I think it was 15,000 square feet. So it wasn't even it's like a third of an acre, but she bought it for $275. It was a
Wow.
nurse, USD loan.
Nice.
Yeah, it was good for her. Not for everybody, but it's good. So just thought I'd share that.
All right, thank you.
Frank,
Yeah.
This is Peter Kim. Are you ready for the commercial real estate default pretty soon?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think we should have like a little symposium or a podcast that we can set up and find out, you know.
Yeah,
It's
well,
gonna be
when that happen, do you have any strategy to handle that, or like you have an innovative loan program such as a swap rate?
Ooh, good question. No, I don't know, but I'm gonna find out. That's probably the best
Yeah,
answer I can give
maybe,
everybody.
get ready for it, because it's going to happen soon.
That's so
Yep.
true.
Are you talking about because the commercial loans are due, the 5 and 3s are due?
That's
Yeah,
right.
it's a problem.
Yeah.
We do commercial, it's difficult.
Yeah.
We usually do it through a broker because or some bank, a
Yeah.
local bank.
Now you don't do a LIBOR, you do the SOFR now, right? You using the
Yeah.
SOFR as the gauge. You don't do a
Yeah.
LIBOR anymore because it's phased out beginning of the
Yeah.
year.
That's right, it's phased out.
Have you been hearing about CMT? That the CMT.
CMT too. I don't like MT.
Yeah.
Do you?
I don't, but I mean, we have one product for investment properties that we call it it's called all in one. CMG has this proprietary thing that's really good for where you do a sweepable mortgage. You could do a 3-year fixed on a 30-year loan,
Mhm.
and where you can put your money, all your principal, whatever income you make, put it to your mortgage. So it's a first lien HELOC, so your principal drops down, and then you
Yeah.
use it as you go along. So technically, you could pay off your house in 14 or 15 years.
But that's not commercial, right?
No. It's that's the only thing we use on a CMT here. It's called all in one, but for residential. Mainly
Yeah.
more like for Airbnbs, investment properties, but not commercial. Commercial is a whole different beast that I'm not too familiar with it. I stick more to residential.
Got
But
it.
Peter brought up a good point with that I think that's something that could be discussed.
Peter, what do you really think the commercial is going to have a big fallout soon?
Yep.
Well, you can
Yeah,
then you can do
I
you have
think
a lot of
so.
listings. You may have a lot of listings.
But then you need buyers, right?
Yeah, that's true, right? You
Yeah,
have
there's two
you
sides
have to
to
look
it.
at,
So,
you know,
unless the prices come to a reasonable price, you know, and it debt services itself, then it'll be a good market. But if it's inflated, the banks are gonna eat it up, you know?
yeah.
They're actually calling it commercial get-in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the buyers
Yeah.
are kind of smart now.
Yeah.
Nowadays, they look at the cap. You know, right now, the apartments, the cap is 4.5. You know, there's no way they will buy at the 4.5 cap now because
Yeah.
the interest rate is so high.
Right.
And they can get a pretty reasonable return for 4% or even 5%. Just
Yeah,
by
some of the
buying
4 months
the
CD
land,
my
you know.
husband put in is 5.25 now. They pay
Yeah, so
five
why
point-
should they buy a commercial real estate for 4.5 cap, you know?
headaches. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
big problem.
Okay, thank you for all that.
Thank you.
Marie, good morning.